Zoe had just turned 20, but nothing about that morning felt like a birthday. Her small home in Milltown, which once smelled of her mother's fresh bread, now smelled of anger and silence. Her mother stood in the doorway, pointing at her with trembling hands. "You've embarrassed us, Zoe. You've brought shame into this house." Her father didn't look at her. He kept staring at the floor as if she wasn't his child. Zoe tried to speak, her voice unsteady. "Mom, Dad, please let me explain. I didn't plan this." She touched her small baby bump with shaking fingers. But her mother's voice cut through her words like a blade. "Explain what? That you got pregnant and the boy ran away? What kind of daughter does this?" Zoe felt her heart shatter. The same parents who once cheered when she topped her class now looked at her like she was nothing. Her younger sister, Leah, stood by the wall pretending to be on her phone, but Zoe knew she was recording everything. Shame wrapped around Zoe like a thick blanket. Then her father finally spoke, his voice cold and distant. "Pack your things and leave. If you can make adult choices, you can live with them." On the morning she turned 20, Zoe walked out of her parents' house with a small suitcase instead of a birthday gift. Rain poured heavily, soaking her clothes, her hair, and her hope. Neighbors peeked through their windows. One of them whispered loudly, "Such a pretty girl wasted." Zoe hugged her belly and whispered to her baby, "We'll survive, little one. I promise." She started walking down the muddy road, each step heavier than the one before. She had no idea where she was going. She had no money, no family, and nowhere to sleep. By nightfall, her feet were numb, her clothes drenched, and her body shaking from cold and fear. She finally reached an abandoned bus station on the edge of town. The building smelled of rust and rainwater. Broken benches were scattered everywhere. She sat on one, pulled her suitcase close, and curled up tightly. Rats ran in the dark corners, and the wind whistled through the cracked windows. Zoe closed her eyes and tried to breathe, wiping tears with trembling hands. "We'll be okay," she whispered again. But even she didn't believe it. That night, loneliness pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't lift. The days that followed were the hardest of Zoe's life. Each morning she woke up cold, hungry, and exhausted. Her phone died on the second day, and she had no charger, no place to borrow one, and no one to call even if she charged it. She walked through the streets searching for simple jobs, sweeping shops, packing goods, washing clothes, but every time someone noticed her growing belly, they shook their heads and said, "Sorry, we can't hire you." One afternoon, she sat outside a small roadside cafe, staring at her empty hands. She whispered, "What am I going to do?" Just then, she saw a woman dropping a pile of dirty dishes behind the cafe. Without thinking, Zoe stood and said gently, "Can I help you? I don't need much. Just food, please." The woman looked at her closely. Her eyes softened. "What's your name?" "Zoe," she whispered. "I just need something to eat." The woman nodded. "All right, Zoe. Come inside." Her name was Aunt Mary. From that day, Zoe washed dishes for a few coins and a plate of warm food. It wasn't much, but it kept her and her baby alive. Zoe returned to the bus station every evening with a small plastic bag of leftovers. Sometimes half a piece of chicken, sometimes a little rice, sometimes just bread. She ate slowly, saving some for the next morning. Whenever Aunt Mary noticed Zoe working too slowly or holding her back painfully, she whispered, "You're too young to be carrying the whole world, my girl. Eat well." Those tiny acts of kindness became Zoe's anchor. At night, she wrapped herself in an old thin blanket, listening to the rain tapping on the broken roof. Sometimes it leaked, and she woke up soaked and shivering, but she never stopped. Each time her baby kicked, she whispered, "It's okay, little one. I'm still here." Many nights she cried quietly, afraid someone would see her weakness. But she wiped her face and forced herself to keep going. She had no choice. One evening, Aunt Mary surprised her with a thicker blanket. "Take this," she said. "No child should be sleeping in the cold." Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small spark of warmth, not from the blanket, but from kindness. Months passed. Zoe learned how to survive on little. She saved every coin she earned, hiding them inside a rusty biscuit tin she kept under her bag. Each time she added a new coin, she smiled. "We're getting closer," she whispered. But closer to what, she didn't know. One night, the contractions started. She was sitting outside the bus station counting her coins when a sharp pain tore through her stomach. She gasped and dropped the tin. "No, not now," she whispered. Another pain came, stronger. Zoe tried to stand, but her legs trembled. She began walking toward the nearest clinic, a 20-minute walk away. Rain started again, heavy and cold. Cars drove past but no one stopped. By the time she reached the clinic gate, she could barely speak. A guard shouted, "We're closed. Come back tomorrow." Zoe cried out, "Please. My baby," but he looked away. She collapsed on the wet ground. Suddenly a young nurse ran toward her, kneeling beside her. "Oh my God, are you in labor?" "Yes, please," Zoe whispered. "Help me." The nurse shouted for help. Her name was Nurse Bella. Bella held Zoe's hand tightly. "Breathe, Zoe. You're not alone. I'm here." Hours passed. Zoe screamed, cried, and pushed with every bit of strength she had left. Bella stayed beside her through all of it, wiping her forehead and saying softly, "You can do this, Zoe. Just one more push." And then, through all the pain, Zoe heard it, the tiny cry of her newborn. Bella smiled warmly. "It's a boy." Zoe's heart stopped. She reached out, tears flooding her face as she held him for the first time. "My baby, my beautiful boy," she whispered. "You're my reason now." She named him Theo. Everything changed in that moment. The months of hunger, rejection, cold nights, and broken hopes faded into the background. Theo's tiny fingers wrapped around her thumb, and Zoe felt strength she didn't know she had. Bella didn't leave Zoe's side. She arranged a small room for Zoe and Theo near the market. "You deserve a safe place," she said. Zoe cried tears of gratitude. The room was tiny, one bed, a cracked mirror, and a stove, but to Zoe, it felt like a palace. "We finally have a home," she whispered to Theo. For the first time, she slept peacefully, her baby curled beside her. With the small money she managed to save, Zoe went to the local market and bought second-hand clothes to resell. She washed, folded, and arranged them outside her new room. At first, some people mocked her. A single mother selling clothes? How far will that go? But Zoe ignored them. Each morning she tied Theo securely to her back with a colorful cloth and whispered, "We'll make it, little one." She stood in the sun, rain, and dust calling out to women passing by. Good shirts. Good dresses. She smiled even when she was tired. She bargained gently, never raising her voice. Slowly, her small business grew. She sold a shirt here, a dress there. Every sale felt like a victory. At night, she watched Theo sleep and whispered, "I'm doing this for you." One evening, after a long day, she found a coin she didn't expect inside her sales basket. She held it to her heart. "We're moving forward," she said to Theo, who giggled at the sound of her voice. It was not a rich life, but it was a hopeful one. And hope, Zoe had learned, was sometimes enough. One afternoon at the market, Zoe noticed a group of people gathered around a phone shop, laughing and pointing at the screen. Curious, she stepped closer. The video playing froze her blood. It was her parents' house, decorated with lights, flowers, music playing loudly. Leah's engagement party. The place looked grand, beautiful, full of joy. The camera panned to her sister smiling beside her fiancé. Someone beside Zoe whispered, "The proud daughter of the Mason family." Zoe's chest tightened. She stepped closer. The camera moved to her parents. Her father shook hands with guests happily. Her mother, holding a microphone, laughed and said, "We raised two daughters, one we're proud of, and one we don't talk about." The crowd in the shop laughed. Zoe felt her heart break all over again. She forced a smile to hide the pain, then slowly walked away from the crowd. Her legs felt weak. That evening, Zoe held Theo tightly in their small room. She whispered, "It's all right, my baby. They may forget me, but I won't forget who I am." She wiped her tears before they fell on Theo's small face. Weeks later, Zoe sat outside her room fanning Theo as he slept in a basket beside her. The market was quiet, so she borrowed a neighbor's old phone to scroll through social media. She rarely went online. It reminded her of the life she once had. But she liked seeing encouraging quotes or baby videos sometimes. Suddenly, a message popped up. "Is this Zoe Mason?" Her full name. Nobody called her that anymore. Her hands began to shake. Another message came. "It's Kyle. Please don't close this." I need to explain.
Zoe froze. Kyle. The father of her child.
The boy who promised, I'll come back for you, Zoe, and never did.
She read his message slowly.
I didn't leave you.
My father sent me abroad. They took my phone. They blocked all contact. I looked for you everywhere. I'm home now.
Please. I need to see you. Zoe's eyes filled with tears, anger, shock, confusion. She looked at Theo's peaceful face. Part of her wanted to scream at Kyle for everything she endured. But another part remembered how deeply she once loved him. After a long silence, Zoe deleted the message.
We don't need him, she whispered. We made it on our own.
The next morning seemed normal. Zoe arranged her clothes, chatting with passing women.
Theo slept quietly on her back.
But suddenly, loud engines echoed through the street. Everyone turned.
5 black SUVs rolled into the market. Their windows were tinted, their tires spotless. Men in dark suits stepped out. The whole market froze. Who are they? A woman whispered.
A politician, another guest. Zoe looked around, confused and anxious. The SUVs stopped right in front of her stall.
Her heart pounded.
The back door of the first SUV opened slowly. A tall man stepped out wearing a white shirt and a gold watch. His eyes scanned the market, until they landed on her. Zoe's breath caught. Kyle. The same Kyle she tried to forget. The same Kyle who never returned. His lips parted as he whispered, Zoe.
The crowd gasped.
People pulled out their phones and whispered, he came for her.
Zoe felt dizzy.
Why are you here? She whispered. Kyle stepped closer, eyes full of regret.
Because I should have never left you. Time stopped.
Everything she buried came rushing back. For a moment, Zoe forgot how to breathe. The market went quiet except for a few whispers and the sound of someone's phone recording. Kyle stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Zoe, he said again, softer this time. It's really you. Zoe's hands shook as she held on to the edge of a table. You don't get to just show up, she whispered. You don't get to say my name like nothing happened. Kyle's eyes dropped to the small feet peeking from the cloth on her back.
His voice broke.
My son, isn't he? Zoe hesitated, then nodded once.
The crowd gasped.
Kyle's face crumpled.
He slowly reached out.
Can I hold him?
Zoe wanted to say no.
She wanted to scream. But Theo stirred, and something inside her softened. Carefully, she untied the cloth and placed Theo in Kyle's arms. Kyle held the baby like he was holding something made of glass. Tears slid down his cheeks. I missed his first word, his first laugh, his first step, he whispered. But I swear I won't miss anything again.
Not if you let me try. Zoe's jaw tightened.
You disappeared, she said, her voice low but sharp. You didn't see me sleeping on cold benches. You didn't hear people calling me names. You weren't there when I begged for work with your son in my stomach.
Kyle nodded, tears still falling. You're right, he said. You're right to be angry. But I didn't walk away. He took a shaky breath.
The week I promised I'd come back, my father sent me abroad. He took my phone, my laptop, everything.
He told me you were a distraction.
He said if I contacted you, he'd cut me off completely.
I tried to reach you when I returned. I went to your old house.
They told me you were gone and never wanted to be found.
Zoe swallowed hard.
So you built your life and moved on?
Kyle shook his head.
I built a company, yes.
But nothing felt complete. I kept looking.
I didn't even know Theo existed until today. Theo touched Kyle's cheek with his tiny hand and giggled.
The sound broke something inside Zoe.
She looked at her son, then at Kyle. Her heart was tired, but it was still capable of feeling. Later that evening, Kyle sat on a wooden stool outside Zoe's small room. Theo slept inside on the bed, wrapped in a blanket. Zoe sat across from Kyle, arms folded. Why did you come with all those cars? She asked quietly. You scared everyone. Kyle gave a small, nervous smile. I didn't come to show off, he said. This is just my life now. I own Harris Group. The cars, the security, they are part of it. Zoe looked away. Money doesn't fix what happened.
I know, he replied.
But I don't want to just say sorry.
I want to build something with you. For you. For Theo. She shook her head. My family threw me out. They laughed about me in front of strangers.
I don't ever want to see them again. Kyle leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. They need to see what they threw away, Zoe. Not to make you beg for their love, but to show them you survived without them.
She was quiet for a long time.
Finally, she whispered, I'm not going there alone.
Kyle nodded. You won't. I'll be right beside you.
They won't hurt you again. On Saturday morning, the sound of engines filled Zoe's old neighborhood. Children ran to the road, shouting, Look! Look! As the sleek black SUVs rolled down the dusty street. Curtains moved. Doors opened. Neighbors stepped outside, whispering. Zoe sat in the front seat, her palms sweaty. Theo sat on her lap in a tiny blue shirt Kyle had bought. You can still change your mind, Kyle said gently. Zoe shook her head. No. I need this. The convoy stopped in front of her parents' gate. The same gate that had closed behind her the day she was thrown out. Her father stepped outside, annoyed. What is all this noise? He snapped. When he saw Zoe, he froze. Her mother appeared behind him, holding a tray. The tray slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. Zoe, she whispered. Kyle stepped out of the car, straightening his suit. He walked to the gate and looked her father in the eye. Good afternoon, sir, he said calmly. I came to see the daughter you called a mistake. The words hit the air like thunder. Neighbors leaned in closer. Phones came out. No one blinked. Inside the yard, her parents stood stiffly as Kyle and Zoe walked in. Theo clung to Zoe's dress, burying his face in her leg. Her mother's voice shook. Zoe, you look so different. Zoe's eyes were calm. I had to grow up fast, she replied. Her father tried to sound strong. You should have told us about him, he said, nodding at Theo. We didn't know. Kyle's jaw tightened. With respect, sir, you didn't want to know, he said. She begged you to listen. You sent her into the rain. You didn't ask if she was safe. Now you suddenly care because she is standing beside money and power. Her father's cheeks flushed. Who exactly are you to talk to me like that? Kyle Harris, he answered quietly. Owner of Harris Group. And the father of your grandson. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Grandson, she repeated. She looked at Theo, then at Zoe. My child. Zoe raised a hand gently. You called me shame, she said. You told people not to speak my name. Today you can say it because I'm not broken anymore. But I wasn't broken then either. I was just alone. They all moved into the living room that used to be Zoe's favorite place as a child. The furniture, the curtains, the photos on the wall. It all looked the same. But Zoe felt different. Stronger. Her younger sister Leah walked in wearing a fancy dress. Her jaw dropped. Zoe, she whispered. You're really here? Zoe gave a small nod. Carl turned to her parents. I bought the land next to your textile shop, he said in a steady voice. Her father blinked. For business. Yes, Carl replied. I'm building a women's center there. A training place for young women who were cast out or abandoned. Her mother frowned in confusion. Why here? Kyle looked at Zoe with a soft smile. Because it will be named after her. The room went silent. The Zoe Mason Center, he said. It was her idea. She wants to help other girls who went through what she did. Leah lowered her eyes, shame on her face. Her father's pride seemed to melt away all at once. You embarrassed this family, he muttered weakly. Do you know what people said about us when you— No, sir, Kyle cut in gently. You embarrassed yourself. She built herself before I could even find her. Zoe looked at her parents, her eyes soft but steady. You didn't have to agree with my choices, she said quietly. You didn't even have to like me. But you should have believed I would survive. Her mother broke then. Tears poured down her cheeks. I was afraid, she said. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of being judged. I chose my fear over my daughter. I was wrong. Zoe, please, forgive me. Zoe's throat tightened. For a moment she was that scared girl again, standing in the rain with a suitcase. Then she looked down at Theo, who was now playing with the edge of the sofa. I forgave you a long time ago, she said softly, because I needed peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean I will forget what happened. It doesn't mean I will pretend it didn't hurt. Her father swallowed hard. Can we start again? He asked. Zoe smiled sadly. Maybe, she said. But this time, I won't beg to belong here. I have my own home now.
My own family.
If you want to be part of it, you'll have to learn to love me as I am, not as you wish I was. Months passed, and the sound of sewing machines and laughter filled the new building next to the old textile shop. A bright sign stood above the gate, ZOE Mason Women's Center. The walls inside were painted soft yellow, with big open windows that let the sunlight in. Girls and young women sat at tables learning to sew, bake, and manage small businesses.
Some had babies sleeping in baskets nearby.
Zoe walked through the hallways in a simple dress, a pen tucked behind her ear. She stopped beside one girl whose hands shook as she tried to sew a straight line.
Don't rush, Zoe said gently.
You're not just stitching fabric.
You're stitching your life back together. Take your time.
The girl smiled nervously and tried again. Theo ran in the courtyard, chasing bubbles Kyle made for him. Sometimes Zoe paused just to watch them, her chest full of quiet joy. Aunt Mary visited often, bringing snacks and hugs for everyone. Nurse Bella came too, teaching health classes for young mothers.
The center was more than a building.
It was a promise that no girl would be left alone in the rain again. One bright afternoon, a young reporter arrived with a camera crew.
She shook Zoe's hand nervously.
Miss Zoe, she said, your story has inspired so many people online. We'd like to share it.
They filmed the classrooms, the courtyard, the laughter. Then they asked Zoe to stand near the gate, the sign above her.
Theo stood beside her, holding her hand, while Kyle watched from a distance with a proud smile.
The reporter lifted her microphone.
You lost your home, your family, and almost all your hope, she said. But now you help others rebuild their lives. What kept you going when everything fell apart?
Zoe thought for a moment.
Her eyes drifted to Theo, who was now trying to catch a butterfly.
She smiled softly.
Love doesn't always save us, she said. Sometimes survival does. And if you survive long enough, survival turns into power. Not power to hurt others, but power to lift them up.
The reporter's eyes shone.
She lowered the microphone slowly, unable to speak for a second. The camera kept rolling as women behind Zoe waved and laughed, their lives in motion again. When the filming ended and the crew left, the center grew quiet again. Zoe sat on a bench in the courtyard, watching the sky turn soft orange. Theo climbed onto her lap, still holding his imaginary butterfly. Kyle sat beside them, their shoulders gently touching. Do you ever think about that night? He asked softly. The one when they threw you out.
Zoe nodded. Sometimes, she said.
But now when I remember it, I also see this place.
These girls. You. Theo.
It hurts less when I see what grew from it.
She looked at her son.
They tried to break me, she whispered, brushing his hair back. But they only bent me long enough for me to learn how to stand stronger. Theo giggled and hugged her neck.
Kyle wrapped an arm around both of them.
The lights from the center glowed behind them, and the sound of distant sewing machines hummed like a gentle song.
Zoe lifted her eyes to the sky and smiled.
We made it, my boy, she said. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove to ourselves we were always enough. And for the first time, her heart felt completely, deeply home.